Everyone, welcome to the June 24th, 2021 BAR Small Virtual Meeting. My name is Lindsay Van Slambrook. The other board members present this afternoon are Glenn Gardner, Bill Huey, Julia Martin, and Fillmore Wilson. City staff present today are Tori Parrish and Kim Lavin. The order of the meeting will be as follows. First, we'll have an introduction and overview of the project by city staff to the board and for the public. This will be followed by the applicant's presentation. There is a 10-minute time limit on this. Any and all presenters should clearly state their name for the record, first and last. Persons affiliated with the project, such as owners, developers, designers, and consultants, should speak during this portion as well, rather than in the public comment section. By ordinance, the board can ask questions at any time. By custom, we ask questions on the heels of the applicant's presentation. This will be followed by a period of public comment. Following public comment, we'll hear city staff comments and recommendations. And this will be followed by a period of applicant response or clarification to public comment or the city staff comments. This is not an opportunity for the applicant to reopen their presentation. This is the opportunity to clarify, to ask for clarification, or to respond to anything that was raised by the public or city staff. Following the applicant response period, we will go into board discussion and a vote. The applicant presentation and public comment will be closed at that point. The applicant may clarify inaccurate information when recognized by me. Please do so by raising your hand on Zoom. And you will only be able to speak if recognized. The following items have been withdrawn or deferred this evening. Agenda item number 1, 5 Shepherd Street, agenda item 5, 4 Haygood Street, and agenda item number 5, 166 Wentworth Street. Please limit your comments to architecture only. Comments related to zoning, such as parking, lot traffic, lot coverage, and livability concerns are not within the purview of this meeting. Not be voiced. Kim, I will turn it over to you for.
Thank you, Lindsay. Staff will control the PowerPoint presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during your presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name whenever speaking. Video and microphone has been disabled for all attendees. Attendees, not board members or staff, will only be given the capability to speak when they're called on during the public comment period. Chat and Q&A functions have been disabled for everyone. For public comment, the applicants, all team members, and the public have been required to register, indicate the project they wish to comment on, and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Just as in in-person meetings, all applications heard today are part of a public meeting format. If you've registered and will speak during the public comment portion of the meeting, you'll need to state your name and address for the record. Those members of the public that have registered will be called on in order by project. Staff will call on the registered members of the public to speak for each project. Unregistered members of the public who raise their hand will not be called on. For the board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and for their vote on a motion. Each member, when voting, should respond yay in favor or nay not in favor. The chair shall reread the motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chair if she has not reread the motion accurately. If the board member needs to recuse, he or she will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into an executive session, they'll call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on the Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they're ready to return to the regular meeting. Results and staff comments will be posted on the city website at www.charleston-sc.gov/BAR. These recordings are being recorded and broadcast to the City of Charleston's YouTube channel.
All right, agenda number 1 and 2 has been deferred. We're on to agenda item number 3, 6B Street.
So it looks like we don't have our applicant for this one. Could be a problem.
We want to, am I echoing?
I don't hear it.
It's probably not your fault. I don't know whose fault it is. Someone with loudspeakers.
I can hear myself. Well, if they are not available, we can move on to other agenda items and then go back to this one. Is the applicant for 125 Trad Street here?
Yes.
Okay, we'll temporarily skip over 6B Street and move to agenda item 4, 125 Trad Street.
I'll be recusing Lindsay.
Okay. Thank you, Glenn.
Okay, I put Glenn on hold.
Okay,
125 Trad Street is requesting preliminary approval for a new pool house, landscaping, and hardscaping. The building is a Category 2 in the Charlestown neighborhood. It was built in 1807 and in the Old and Historic District. Now here's an aerial for just a little bit of familiarity to the property. It's between Legree and Lenwood on the south side of Trad. And some existing site photos. I'm looking east on Trad Street. And this is looking west. For a little bit of street context. This is Sanborn maps from 1884. And the building's right here. And then 1888. And this is 1944 and 1955. You can see it lost the wood house. And Sebastian von Marshall, if you want to take it from here.
Thank you, Kim. Can you hear me?
yes, we can.
Excellent. Kim, thank you so much. I'd like to thank the board. And I would like to note that, well, I guess name first, Sebastian von Marshall, architect. I'm the architect for the owner. The owners, Christian and Suzanne, I believe, are both on the call as well. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Here we are, cover sheet. So we're proposing a roughly 280 square foot pool house and a new landscape and pool at 125 Trad Street. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Here's the existing survey. You can see Trad Street at the top, the long driveway that currently snakes all the way to the back, and the existing gravel parking in the rear. Next slide, please. The site plan, again, now Trad Street on the left-hand side, north is to the left. You can see the existing 3-story wood house, the existing covered porches, the existing kitchen house, which is attached. And then most of the current existing driveway, the proposed hardscape, paths and some parking there, all the way to the back. At the rear of the lot, the pool house off on the side here, and then the pool itself up against sort of the rear property line running parallel to Trad Street as well. Let's see really quickly, we're adding a couple of other sort of seating areas along the way, a little formal garden, and I'll talk more about the landscape when we get to the landscape drawings at the end. Next slide, please. Again, just some aerial images showing the building. Next slide, please. And some existing images. So you can kind of see the view down the driveway here, the existing porches, the existing house, the existing kitchen house on the right. Next slide, please. And then the proposed location of the pool house. And what I'd like to really highlight on this slide here is that the current neighbor to the west, directly to the west, you can see the roof of her pool house. I did personally meet with her. I met with the 3 neighbors across the street. I met with the Historic Charleston Foundation, the Preservation Society, and the Charlestown Neighborhood Association regarding this project. And I'll speak more to this in a little bit, but the proposed location for a pool house justified on this side of the property is really to reduce the impact to the neighbor on the other side who does not have a structure on his property line. However, the neighbor to the west, as you can see, has an existing pool house on her property line. And the thought is that this way, by backing the 2 buildings up against one another, we can reduce the visual impact to the neighbors on both sides, really. One is not affected at all, and the other is not affected by virtue of the fact that the 2 buildings line up nicely. And I did discuss this at length with that neighbor, and she was perfectly okay with that. You can see the existing brick wall along the back there behind the parked construction vehicles. That's all staying, that's the neighbor's property, but the pool would be running right to left in the image in front of that, roughly where those vehicles are parked. Next slide, please. So now a couple of precedent images, and I'd really like to dwell on three things: their design, their chronology, and also their location on the site. So we're going to be looking at a couple different examples that from first period, 18th century, 19th century, 20th century, contemporary examples. So sort of a nice mixture of those, and also a couple of different architectural styles. So the precedent for kind of eccentric garden folly is downtown behind big houses, I think, as you all know, is there. And, you know, I think it's what gives a lot of these buildings such character and such vibrancy and makes the neighborhood really interesting. So you have Gothic revival, you know, tea houses, in this case, the focal point on an axis of the driveway, a contemporary example of a neoclassical pool house, which it should be noted is sort of also not behind the house. It's off on the side with the pool sort of wonderfully located, but it is its own thing off on the site. Next slide, please. Everybody knows, of course, the Pineapple Gate House and the wonderful garden folly behind the formal parterre, sort of its own thing. Slightly less known is the tea house on 90s Battery at the Roper House. It's kind of tucked away. Also not behind the building, though. If you go up to the property and you on the southern side of the property line, you look all the way back, you can see tucked back in there. That's a 1950s edition by the Guggenheims when they owned the property. So specifically, I'd like to point to the precedent of the roof shape, that pagoda roof shape, which really does occur historically and in contemporary examples as well. Next slide, please. And then a couple more. This is a really fun one on the left. That's a bathhouse behind 138 Wentworth Street. Again, we get that similar roof shape. I think that was first period, 19th century. And then these two little pool houses, Gothic revival over on Church Street. Next slide, please. A contemporary example by one of the board members, you know, showing kind of the level of detailing in terms of profiles and trim and scale, things like that. I thought it was very successful and it's kind of similar to what we're proposing. And then another nice example of an addition to Vandross Row with another pagoda roof awning over on the side there. So a nice mixture of different building types and scales with sort of different eccentric features, both standalone, contemporary, historic, additions to historic buildings, etc. Next slide, please. The drawings for the pool house itself, our roof plan, our floor plan, pretty straightforward. It's a sitting room on one side in the center with on the side is a little serving area, a bar, a closet for storing things like seat cushions on the other side, storage. And I would like to point out that storage on the right-hand side, storage 103 is facing Trad Street. So, you know, that would contain additional pool equipment, skimmers, patio furniture, etc. So that's not going to be a very sort of sightly room in there. So we do have solid doors on the front of that. Electrical plan. Building isn't flood, so of course all of the electrical has to be mounted above flood. Next slide, please. We are providing flood vents as required. I would rather not have to, but there they are. You can see in view 3 and view 4. View 1 is the view from the sitting area from the inside of the lot. So you get to see the 3 French doors with the transoms opening to that sitting room on the inside with symmetrically on either side these solid masses. The materials are all sort of in keeping with the main house, but slightly differentiated. So for example, we're using a smaller clapboard size to show that we're not mimicking the siding on the existing house. You know, the cornice is a very simple profile, a cyma and a corona and soffit, and then just I believe just a bed mold under that. And then you can see the pagoda shaped roof on that. That would be a standing seam metal copper, similar, identically really to the pool house that it backs up to. So those two will actually patinate and hopefully eventually look the same. The next view is the view from the pool. This is what you'd be looking at from the, sorry, can you go back one slide? The next view up here, O2 on the right, is a view of the pool house from the pool. So all you see is a little oval window and there's a little foot washing station there as well. The third view, O3 on the bottom left, is the back of the pool house. This is on the side facing the property line. And there would be pool equipment back there. And then the last view, O4, is the view facing the front on Trad Street. You know, that flood vent there really, again, only because I think it's required, unfortunately. We're going to try to plant that out as much as possible. I'll talk about that a little later. We are showing some solid or louvered doors there to conceal the interior of that storage room. Next slide, please. Building section, typical through that sitting room, you can see the door to that little storage closet on the far side. We're looking south with the doors to the seating area on the left and the property line on the right. And you can see again the roof shape, and then following that inside is a false vault with a similar sloping roof shape to kind of mimic that exterior form. Next slide, please.
Mr. Von Marshall, you've got about a minute left.
Oh, thank you. In that case, let's kind of skip forward wall sections. Trim details, we have our little Vitruvian wave here to kind of, or stylized motif. Next slide, please. Thank you so much for that. Doors and windows, all pretty straightforward. Next slide. Again, let's go straight to Glenn's planting plan. A lot of the existing material staying, it's about 12 years old. So a couple of palmettos along the property line on the west, you can see at the bottom there, those are staying. The palmettos along the property line on the south, those are staying. Additional hardscaping would all be Carolina brick or limestone. The new pool back there is located to avoid the location of a previous pool that we think was filled in and may still be in the ground. Formal gardens, sitting areas, again, just to kind of emphasize this, the reason we put the pool house over on the side, in case questions come up, is really to limit any disturbance to the neighbor on the east side. By putting it on the west side, we're lining up the buildings. It also gives the owner privacy. So when tourists are walking down Trad Street and they look at the building, they're not looking at them directly in the pool. They get a little bit of privacy back there as well. I think that's it. I think I met with all the neighbors and the preservation groups, and I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Von Marshall. Do my fellow board members have any questions for Mr. Von Marshall at this time? All right, hearing none. Kim, do we have any public comment?
We do. We have Anna Catherine Carroll.
Okay.
Anna Catherine, you have the floor when you're ready.
Thank you. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We really appreciate the applicant reaching out to us to discuss this project. We generally feel the proposed pool house is well designed and will complement the property nicely. However, while we recognize the structure is sited far back from the street, we have communicated to the applicant that we would prefer that the site plan be revisited to situate the new pool house on the other side of the lot to the rear of the main house and kitchen house, which we feel is more in keeping with Charleston's traditional lot configurations. Thank you.
And we also have April Wood. April, you have the floor.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has an exterior easement on 125 Trad Street, and we have reviewed and approved of the request for preliminary approval for a new pool house, landscaping, and hardscaping at 125 Trad. This property has had both a swimming pool and a pool house in the past. We believe that the application has been carefully thought out, is well detailed, and is sensitive to the historic character of the property. We respectfully recommend approval of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, April.
And that's all for public comment.
Kim, well, I'll turn it over to you for Csaf comments and recommendations.
Thank you. We just have a couple comments. Consider elevating the aesthetic of the Trad Street facing door. Although it's not the primary door, its location warrants consideration. And add a screening panel, standalone louvers, or unattached to a house or wall, or some sort of landscaping at the pool equipment side. The staff's recommending conceptual approval with staff comments noted and final review by staff.
Yeah.
Thank you. If I could, let's see, go ahead, raise my hand.
Well, Mr. Von Marshall, this is actually your turn to respond or clarify to anything from public comment or Kim.
Thank you. I would like to take a moment. We communicated with the Preservation Society about the location of the building, and quite frankly, I think the precedent isn't there. The images we looked at show that these buildings are located all over the properties, and while I understand the tradition of dependencies following the main line of the building, for garden structures, I think all we have to do is walk a couple blocks to see that they're sort of scattered nicely. We would actually like to request final approval. We think the drawing set is very thorough, but of course we're happy to work with the staff to ensure that we add a screening panel or some kind of planting to cover the pool equipment, and are of course happy to look at that door with them as well.
Thank you, Mr. Von Marshall.
Thank you.
All right, let's move to board discussion and a vote.
All right, I can start. I think it's a simple, elegant little building design, and you know, I hear the Preservation Society, but I think I'm comfortable with it not being directly behind the building because it is a garden structure, and I do agree there's precedent for that, and it provides a sort of a nice terminus when you look down the driveway, although it's quite far from the street. My one little tiny reservation was that flood vent seems to be right at the terminus. I don't know if it would make sense to flip it to the opposite side of that north elevation, just so it's absolutely never visible to the public. But
Sure.
but other than that, I really have nothing to say. I think it's nice and appropriate.
Yeah, this is Bill. I would say I agree with staff's recommendation and their comments. I think those items should be investigated. Otherwise, yeah, I agree with what Julia said as well. Thanks.
Go ahead, Bill.
No, I was just going to say that I don't have any serious objections to this at all. I think it's an attractive little building. I do agree with staff's comment about elevating that the side door, which actually faces Trad Street. I think that could be a little thought out to be a little more attractive. Other than that, I have no comments.
Now, this is Lindsay. I think it's really nice. I really like the roof. It just sticks out to me. And yeah, I agree with other comments from board members and staff. Julie, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I was just going to talk about staff's comment number 1. I mean, to me, the way that's designed and detailed is nice, and it's not pretending that it's a portal into a museum, because it's not. I think it's nicely detailed and simple as is, but I would not be opposed to including staff comment number 1. So I think I just neutralized myself. I'll just make a motion for, I guess let's say preliminary approval with staff comments and final review by staff.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for preliminary approval with staff comments noted and final review by staff. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Fillmore. Put it to a vote. Bill?
Yay in favor.
Julia?
Yay in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes as the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Von Marshall.
Thank you.
Let's bring Glenn back in. And also, is the applicant for agenda item 3, 6B Street, are they here?
I don't see them unless they're calling from a phone number that ends in 264. Mr. McKee. No, and we've emailed and called him in the meantime. So
okay, well, let's move on to 119 through 121 Broad Street, and then we can check that after that one.
Okay, great. 119, 121 Broad Street is requesting preliminary approval for modifications to the fenestration at the rear. The building's a category 2 in the Charlestown neighborhood and was built in 1803 and in the old and historic district. Here's just an aerial to familiarize yourself. The building's on the south side of Broad between Orange and Legree Streets. And here's the building, some existing site photos. You can hardly see the portion where they are proposing for the windows to go. This is looking west on Broad Street and looking east. And if Mr. Stevenson wants to take it from here, Mr. Stevenson, you have the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yes, so this obviously this is like one of the great houses of Charleston and properties. The current owner purchased this from the Archdiocese, who'd used it for offices for years. The building was built in like early 1800s, and then in 1900s, the 4th floor was added, and that the marble facade and a whole bunch of other renovations were added. That cool circular room in the back, that's the ballroom and great room, and further. And so we're basically just taking our cues from the original, historical bones of the building. But we did run into some issues with flood, so we've tried to carefully add some flood vents, pretty much where you can't see them or where they make sense. And then the rear portion of the building, which was added again in 1900s, there was 2 windows that were removed, and it's kind of obvious. Perhaps if you could scoot, maybe move through the drawings and we could see the elevation of that. It's one more maybe. Well, you could see it. There's if you look at it in the floor plans, there's a vault, and it's actually under the under the sections here. The far right, there's that little building there. They actually created a vault there. They removed 2 windows on the ground floor, and we'd like to just put them back as they would have originally been there. You can see some ghosting. That there you go. That shows the elevation. Sorry, I didn't see the plan. There you go. One of the issues there's this. They dropped this concrete ceiling and in the vault area on the ground floor, and so we haven't done any demolition, but we're planning on doing a little bit of surgical demolition to find out exactly what was there, and then really just follow the lead of the framing that's there and replace with windows that are in kind that match the rest of the building. That's kind of the biggest issue that we're dealing with. I would love to take that ceiling out and restore that room, but that's not in our scope of work right now. But I think that the main idea is to replace those windows as they originally would have been built there. Are there any questions?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Stevenson at this time?
I have
Go ahead, Philip.
Wilson, I have a more curiosity question, not related to the windows. My recollection was that there was a spiral stair at the, I think it would be the south end of the main porch at one point on this house.
Yeah.
I don't notice it in the drawings. Was it just because that's not part of the submittal?
Yeah, that was actually before I was brought in. There was actually a stair to a mechanical up to the flat roof on the 4th floor where there was a bunch of mechanical units, and which they've removed. And then they removed that spiral stair as well.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that was already gone by the time I came into the picture. But
Thanks
that was
for
a
the
but that was a
a
previous time.
very attractive addition to that house. Thank you.
That is possibly something that we approved just because it was more like a repair that we can approve at staff.
Yes.
Neil, could you maybe talk about the flood vent plan and what you did there on that front?
Yes. So there, you could see there are flood vents or vents for under the house that were installed already. It's just that our square footage numbers were low, and so we added them in the recess under. It's not really shown all that well here, but you could see where the windows are. We're adding some vents in that recess. You can't really see any of them from the street. But we
So maybe the one on the east. Kim, you want to go to that plan? Just curious. Is that at the end, Neil? I forget.
Yeah, it's just to the left of this little appendage.
I mean the drawing of the flood vents. Is that the
Yeah.
end? Okay.
There you go. That's
Oh.
that plan shows where we're adding them.
And you say it's square footage, but it seems like you have more inches than you need.
So for the amount of enclosed space, you need that of square footage. You need that many square inches of vent space, and this is per building inspection. So
Right. I just thought the numbers were higher than they had to be, but maybe I was reading something wrong.
Well, if there's an adjustment to make them lower, we would definitely do it. But I thought we were coming. And this screen is so small I can't even read it. But the numbers were working when we submitted this. So I'll take another look at it.
Okay,
If we could reduce, I would love to.
Okay, that's cool. Thanks.
Any other board questions at this time?
Yeah, this is Bill. Just real quick. Well, Neil, those smart vents, you get 200 square inch credit for those because they're engineered. I guess question, you had mentioned something about ghosting evident. I guess that was on the exterior. Is there a photo in the submittal package of that you saw?
You know what? I did not see that photo in this package, though. We have the photos, and Christopher King is very involved with this, and we were kind of following his advice too. But I wish there was a better photo of that. I'm sorry. I thought that we have better photos. I just thought they didn't make it onto this.
Okay. And then you had mentioned there may be some surgical demolition, I guess, to try to expose those original window locations and sizes.
Yes.
That's interior demolition, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I would love for them to demo that whole room, but vaults are just so they can get so involved removing vaults.
Yeah.
They really didn't want to do that, but who knows? I can imagine in this job that we might wind up completely doing that.
Was there a reinforced concrete wall system in there or something like that you're gonna? Is there a potential issue to the original, I assume, brick?
They dropped 2 I-beams in, and they actually have seated it into the brick wall, and then there's a steel pan on top of that with concrete poured on top of that.
Okay.
It's pretty involved. I mean,
okay.
Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we wound up tearing the whole thing out at some point, but it's not the focus, and it wasn't part of the scope of work right now.
Understood.
There's still an actual vault door there. Nothing fancy, but
it's not going to be too much of a labor to expose the area where these windows potentially were. That's all I'm getting at, right? It's not
correct. Yeah. I mean, I think once we start peeling it away.
Okay. Great.
And while you're there, because the only thing that I have any question about on this is that flood vent on the east side. I'm just hoping Neil doesn't have to make that hole over there. Can you zoom in on that math right there under your cursor? See, I mean, to me, it looks like you already have the amount of square inches opening unengineered that you need. So I'm hopeful you can look into that and not have to make that hole on the east, but that's
I will
just my
definitely look into that. I agree.
Cool.
Any more board questions? All right, we'll move on to public comment. Kim?
We have no public comment.
All right, well, if you will give us the staff comments and recommendations.
We just have one comment. The alterations improve the design of the building, add natural light and ventilation, and are a positive contribution to the rear. So we're recommending final approval pending the vent sorting. So make sure that gets taken care of.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Stevenson, did you want to respond to any to the staff comment?
No, thank you.
All right, I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote.
This is Bill. I have a quick question of staff, Kim. Your comment, basically the alterations improve the aesthetic of the building. Is there some condition per se of, first of all, providing evidence that there were windows existing in this location, and then secondary, matching the size exactly of what those openings present? Is there, additional, sort of qualifications procedurally? Because I know in the past we've had many discussions about new windows and walls or historic openings, and it's gone back and forth quite a bit, but I think we pretty much settled on that if there's evidence of a historic opening, then windows appropriately sized to those openings were okay.
Yeah,
As a running thing.
I think that we feel that these, per drawings, these windows match. And yet we should make a comment that they should be proportionate to the top ones. We've already had them change the drawings because they kind of originally they just kind of pasted in two windows there showing us where they would go, and we said, let's put the appropriately sized windows in. So yeah, we'll have them nail that down.
But is that?
Feel,
I'm sorry, Kim. When you said appropriately sized, is that appropriate to the aesthetic or appropriate to whatever historic evidence provides? Is that?
Well, either one. I mean, if there's evidence of them being there before, then great, let's go back with that. But if there isn't, then we'll go on aesthetics.
Okay, I'm sorry. The way the presentation started, I thought we were talking about reestablishing windows, but what we're talking about is if they're there, great, but if they're not, we're talking about new openings either way. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that through the presentation, but thanks. Let me sit on that one for a second. Go ahead, Fillmore, if you got some, or Glenn.
I don't have anything in addition.
I don't think I do either. I think it's been covered.
Yeah. I'll clarify. I do share the sentiments with minimizing the flood vents as much as possible.
I'll make a motion for final approval with final review by staff and a board condition to verify the necessity of an additional vent on the east.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for final approval with final review by staff and a board comment to ensure to verify the necessity of the vents on the east facade.
Verify the necessity of an additional vent on the east. Yes.
All right, do I have a second?
Second, Glenn.
Glenn. I'll put it to a vote. Bill,
Yay in favor.
Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Julia,
Yay in favor.
Glenn.
In favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Kim, is the applicant here yet? For
Yes.
Yay.
Yeah.
I was thinking through whether you could do a staff deferral during the meeting. I guess that's what we have to do, but
Let me rewind.
just for the
Okay.
record, we are going back to agenda item number 3, 6 B Street.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. 6B Street is requesting conceptual approval for previously approved rear addition. The building's a category 4 in the Canonboro, Elliottboro neighborhood, was built in 1854 and in the old city district. Just for a little bit of context, here's the property on north side of B Street, almost at Rutledge, between Rutledge and Ashley. And some existing site photos for you. This is the house right here. And this image is looking west on B Street and looking east toward Rutledge. This is a view from Rutledge showing the backyard. This little portion is the end of the house where the addition will go. And Sanborn maps. This is from 44 and 55, 51. And this building's not here any longer. So you've got that sight line. This is the survey card from 1985. Has some cool information about features of the building and then the category 4 rating. Here's an old photo.
Yep.
And if Mr. McKee wants to take it from here, Mr. McKee, you have the floor when you're ready to speak.
Mr. McKee,
Yes, ma'am.
the floor is yours when you're ready.
Oh, great. Thank you. Bear with me. I am traveling back from Florida on a family vacation, so I hope you can hear me okay.
We can hear you.
I want to thank you. Can hear me fine? Great. I want to thank everyone for re-reviewing this project for us. Glick Beam did a great job and working it all out, and we went through the whole process and everybody liked the design a couple years ago, but due to a couple different family situations and things like that, we were delayed, and so unfortunately missed our window to pull our permit, and so we're resubmitting the same project that was approved. I think it was the beginning of 2019 is when it was finally approved, but it could have been the tail end of 2018. So the idea behind it was our apartment in the back was where my mother-in-law was living, and it was split up on 2 levels with an old narrow staircase. And so we were trying to give her a 1-bedroom apartment in the back of our house, all on 1 floor. And that's where the whole project began. And unfortunately, in these past couple of years, my mother-in-law has passed away due to the COVID. But now my father is now in the situation where he may be needing this in the next couple of years. So we decided to resubmit it.
Thank you, Mr.
If you have any questions, I'm happy. Okay.
Board members, do you all have any questions for Mr. McKee?
Well, this is Bill. Actually, I have a question of staff. Kim,
Yes.
is this a situation where if they had come soon enough and just asked for an extension, they would have been given it automatically? They just kind of missed that date? Is that what we're
Yes,
seeing?
sir. Yes, sir. If I would have known better, I knew we were coming close to the end of it, and I called down asking how much time we had to pull the permit, and I was told it was 3 years, but it's not 3 years if you have a zoning variance, which we have for our
Okay.
air conditioning units being, and so that reversed it to 2 years. So it was completely my error, and I apologize for making you guys go through this again.
No, totally understandable. And so this is the exact same set of plans that were approved previously.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
I verified
Everything's
that.
exactly the same.
The approval expired on May 31st, 2020. So it was finalized May 31st of 2018.
Thank you.
You do have the opportunity to review this in totality at your intent.
Any other board questions at this time?
No, I think Bill clarified the one question that I had. I just wanted to verify that the time is what brought this back to us, that it had eclipsed the renewal window, and I think we are confirmed now on that.
And thank you, Bill and Kim, for confirming these are the exact same plans. There were no changes. Hearing no other board questions, we'll go on to public comment. Kim?
I don't think we have any public comment. Let me just double check. Oh yeah, we do. Sorry. Oh, no, we don't. I'm looking at the wrong thing. No, we don't have any public comment.
All right. Well, then, Kim, I'll turn it over to you for city staff comments and recommendations.
Thank you, Lindsay. Just have a couple comments. As we mentioned earlier, BAR staff granted the project final approval on May 31st of 2018, which expired in 2020. And this project shall be fully reviewed again as it does not qualify for the extension. Having said that, we just have a few recommendations that could improve the aesthetic of the new addition. Number one, alleviate the long expanse of the shed roof with a low slope and parapet wall extending over the enclosed space. The rear stairwell should have a shed roof extending from it. Consider a balustrade system in lieu of the louvered stairwell and porch area. While board and batten can be a nice transitionary material, we feel that a more traditional lap siding or nickel gap would be appropriate on this expansive addition. So staff's recommending conceptual approval with staff comments noted in final review by staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. McKee, did you want to get any clarification from Kim on the staff comments or respond to anything?
Sure. Actually, our original proposal was horizontal siding of a smaller scale. We have pretty large siding currently on our house, so we were going to make it, that subtle difference. And it was recommended that it be more extreme, and that's where they came up with the board and batten look. So we prefer horizontal siding, to be honest with you. But we were going according to what the board had suggested.
Thank you, Mr. McKee. I will open up now for board discussion and a vote.
This is Bill. I'll go ahead. I'm in agreement. I would say I would almost think procedurally, I would have even considered just having a vote, given that we've had a couple of extensions here in the last couple of meetings that, were rubber stamped. I appreciate the staff's comments and the opportunity to maybe take a look at a few elements. And then in light of the applicant's just response, I'm encouraged by staff's comment about potentially being able to, you know, meet more of the client's wants in horizontal siding. So I'll just say that I'm in support of staff's recommendation and comments, and continue to support the project. Thanks.
My feeling was, I do remember going through several rounds of review on this and finally getting to a point where we were happy. So I don't see any compelling reason to change that. And to me, the aesthetic of this addition is distinct and appropriate with the vertical siding, but I'm not passionately convicted either way. If the majority of us want it to change at this point, so be it. But I'd be inclined to kind of stand by the long thought conclusions we came to before, but that's all.
So Julia, that would basically just mean, kind of like we were saying, if this had met the extension time, it would have gotten an automatic
right
extension.
And I do appreciate that they lost their grandfather, but still.
Yeah. Okay. I can appreciate what you're saying. That's kind of was my initial thought as well. So I guess then, in light of all this, and in light of what we're talking about is sort of a pseudo extension of sorts and a vote of the exact same item, I was just going to make a motion for final approval.
We have a motion on the floor for final approval. Do I have a second?
Second that.
Julia, put it to a vote. Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Julia?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. McKee.
Thank you very much.
And with that, we have come to the end of today's
fastest BAR meeting. Lindsay, you got us down to I can't believe how fast you're running these meetings.
She's a superstar.
Yeah.
All right. So do I have a
Motion to
motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor?